In March 2022, a University of Georgia's Consumer Analytics Program survey noted that burnout is an increasing and prevalent and impactful issue in the accounting sector. Bryan Lapidus, FP&A Practice Director at the Association of Financial Professionals, AFP, says that the pandemic forced finance to work at a faster pace. This state of work has set the expectation of speed with executives and the business. He warned about the potential of FP&A burnout as we move from the pandemic to an annual planning cycles. Now, taking cue from this, we spoke to Victor Nung, Regional Vice President of Asia BlackLine, to discuss the reality of burnout within the FP&A team in Asia and how functional leaders can address the issues. What's causing the burnout FP&A professionals are facing?
So finance is a naturally high-stress job, as you know. All the FP&A professionals, they will have to pull all their late nights throughout the month end and quarter end to close their books, do their manual journal entries, and on top of that, they will have to have a very short deadline, and that just increase the tension, right, that they have, and it's causing all their emotion, mentally and physically strain as well. And because of all these issues right there, naturally they will either think of quitting and stuff like that. So that's one. I think with a recent survey that we did with Census-wide here in Singapore with a lot of CFOs, leaders out there, they realized that a lot of them actually acknowledge, right, that there's a very high shortage of finance skill sets out there, right? There's a lot of reasons that leads to it. And then I think one of the cause of burnout is also because of the increased workload. Right? A lot of the companies out there are looking into strategic initiatives. They're looking into mergers and acquisition, finance systems upgrade. And because of that, that increased additional workloads to all these finance team members, and that just naturally will lead to a lot more stress and burnout at the end.
What are the risks of employee burnout, and how would overall business performance be affected?
I would say the first one would be human errors, right? So as they are prone to all their manual work, with their lack of rest and their stress, naturally or potentially there may be errors in terms of their reporting numbers, incorrect statements during their balance sheet, for example. That may lead to making wrong business decisions, or even at the end may lead to fines that the company may need to pay right towards the end. That's one. Secondly, from what we see a lot is also on talent retention. Because of all the high workloads, finance and accounting professionals are losing their morale. They either quit their jobs, they don't get motivated to come to work anymore. Everything just becomes so repetitive. CFOs out there is also having problem, right, trying to retain their talent. So there's a brain drain. People are leaving just because they're getting better pay. And the whole pandemic situation just really didn't help, right? The work from home culture, people demand a very different working experience these days, and that actually has created somewhat of an impact as well.
If simplifying and automating work would help reduce the risk of burnout in the FP&A team, why aren't many companies automating their work processes for their finance departments?
So I would say the first thing would be the lack of budget, mainly because a lot of the CFO, even finance leaders out there, either one, they do not know what is out there in terms of how it can help their teams in terms of reducing the manual workload and whatnot. And because they don't know what is out there, from an investment standpoint, it's not budgeted, right? So they just carry on with their day-to-day routine. So that's one perspective. And secondly, it's also around, like I said, the skill set of knowledge, FP&A professions out there. There's a big shortage. There's a recent survey that I remember with the Singapore Accounting Commission together with Ernst & Young. One of the main reasons there is a lack of new entrants into FP&A professions is because they demand work-life balance, higher pay, a lot of different, basically it's a whole different expectation altogether, right, with the new generation. Then on top of that, you have things like sectors like information technology, fintech. They are giving a lot higher salary, better packages, more, I would say, exciting role for all these graduates coming out. that's actually one of the main reasons why there's a lack of resources. So a lot of CFOs will just realize that they just can't hire people out there, so therefore they may not go into new technology, and then they just have to live with what they have. That pretty much increase even more burnout, right?
Some audit and consultancy firms have pledged to increase their employees' pay to cope with acute labor shortage. Do you think this will help in easing employee burnout?
Well, to a certain extent, it may, because some employees may feel that they are not being paid enough, but I would say it doesn't work in the long run, right? Because at the end, the fundamental of the issues of all the manual, repetitive and non-sustainable work is still there. So that's one. So even by giving them more pay, make them happy for a while, at the end they will still face the same issues and stress and burnout towards the month end. That's one. Secondly, like I mentioned, the competition out there, it's also high, right? From other sectors, they're paying higher salaries. And I think one interesting point is that the FP&A professional these days, they want to do things that are more fulfilling in their job, not just the usual balance sheet, number crunching work towards the month end. They want to look to be involved in analytics. They want to be involved in transformation projects, right? We have seen even consulting firms these days having people being poached by large organizations, hired just for the sole role of running a finance transformation initiative. They want to do that kind of work instead. But if they can't get out of their, I would say, shell of just the usual manual work, it's also very hard to retain talent at the end. So paying higher salary doesn't mean that they will be able to retain or attract new talents.
How can CFOs play a role in addressing these burnout issues? How can they implement automation solutions with minimal impact to the workflow?
I guess the first thing that CFOs or finance leaders out there, they need to do is first to equip themselves with enough knowledge and awareness of what is outside there. Work very closely with technology vendors, thought leaders, consulting practices to basically see examples of what are the other organizations doing in terms of improving their finance processes, obviously. Secondly is to look at quick wins, right? So obviously if you implement a very large-scale finance transformation project, it takes 1 year, 2 years, and that itself will definitely disrupt a company's processes or the workflow of the team members. So typically what we do is we also help all these finance leaders to look at what are the top 3 areas of pain when it comes to their finance accounting process. And we pick 1 or 2 that can be done in a very short term, so they can see a quick win, they can see quick results without disrupting too much of the flow. And then when a lot more of the accounting professions sees that there's actually value to their job, they can be released to be involved in more strategic initiatives like ERP upgrades and whatnot. That actually gets a lot of internal buy-in as well, because as you know, it's not just a technology thing, it's also a mindset shift, right? You can't just tell a FP&A professional who has been doing the Excel sheet, managing the Excel sheet for the past 20 years to just go online and click a few buttons and things get automated. So that's one, more from a process standpoint. I think secondly would be to work with technology vendors, right, to look at also accounting use cases, right? So for example, like bank reconciliation, what are the most simple, easy to implement processes, right? So bank reconciliation, think about automating the, say, matching of transactions between point of sale systems and credit card data, for example. How can they automate journal entries? And even, slowly moving up the whole chain of transformation, even to intercompany accounting, for example, right? So CFOs actually play a role in that. And I think thirdly is to how CFOs can then align their strategic objectives from a company standpoint to what the finance and accounting team can be part of. So in the past, it's always close the book accurately, give me the report. But right now is if I automate this project for you, I can free you up, you can be part of this, say, merger and acquisition initiative that you're doing. So it gives them more fulfillment, right? So it's not just about money at the end, they actually can bring and contribute to the company.
Finally, what are the ways companies can simplify and automate finance work?
I guess the first most important thing would be the acceptance to change, right? Because a lot of them, like I said, potentially they may be in a company doing that work for the past 10 years, 15 years, 20 years. Even when we speak to a lot of our existing customers, when we first started to deploy BlackLine in those organizations, it's a mindset shift, right? To basically getting them to understand that automation is not there to replace your job. You're not going to lose your job. In fact, it's going to add more value to that particular individual so that they can elevate themselves, right, in terms of what value they can contribute to the organization. So that's the first, I would say, barrier or mindset shift that needs to happen. So it's either through education, through awareness, through speaking with a lot of other companies out there in the community of finance. We have affiliations or even partnerships with organizations like ACCA, ISCA. There's a lot of accountants outside there that has been through that journey. They can also share, right, that it's all okay. Automation is actually here to help rather than to take over your job. So that's one. I think secondly, it's besides embracing change, is to look at how they can use automation tools to ease off their manual workload so that they can get back their work-life balance. Because a lot of them, even when we interview them during projects and whatnot, many of them may not admit that it's a problem until we start drilling down into their day-to-day activities, their, whatever that they need to do to complete their work. They then realize that they may be losing valuable time with their family. They stay up late night, like I mentioned. I have a customer that purposely has booked hotel rooms for their accounting teams during the quarter end close, just so that they can stay late, stay in the hotel next door, and then come back early in the morning next day to complete their job, right? So to get them to basically understand that by implementing automation, there is an avenue of them getting some time back for themselves personally. That's also one area. And thirdly is actually to equip themselves, right? Because, equip themselves with new knowledge, with new, I would say, skill sets, because everything is going digital these days. It's not just about implementing a product or a technology and the thing becomes successful. It's how much adoption it will be throughout the organization. So like I mentioned, I have seen accountants that were just doing work in the back end, transforming themselves to be consultants at the end, right? Helping other organizations on how they can help, improve the efficiency of the close process, work as finance transformation consultants, and basically elevating themselves. Basically, I would call it moving towards the next finance 2.0, right? Whatever you want to call it, but that is a lot what we see these days. A lot of the I would say working level accountants out there. Yeah.